You wrote in the summer that China is going to be a big factor in this election. Now we are days away from November 5th. Do you think that's still the case, and how so?
I think that China is the defining issue that shapes the way that voters view a number of really important parts of US policy. Yes, there are current crises going on, but China remains the larger and probably most central foreign policy question for the US. China is also the US's key economic competitor, maybe adversary, if you want to frame it as a slightly more divisive relationship. And that's fed through to the way that voters understand and view China. China has extremely high negative views among US voters, and that translates to increased support for protectionist trade policies, increased support for things like tariffs, trade barriers. And that's really led both candidates to pursue much more protectionist trade policies in their own policy agendas. Trump certainly is tariff man, as he calls himself, but Harris is no slouch. She's not shied away from endorsing the protectionist policies the Biden administration's put forward, blocking foreign imports of EVs, for instance, and bolstering investment in manufacturing here at home to the detriment potentially of some of our trading partners.
How do you think either Harris or Trump would differ on the global stage? What type of leaders would they be when it comes to foreign policy, including working with or against China?
I think the major difference between Harris and Trump is how willing they are to be engaged on the global stage, or to put it another way, how involved they think the US should be on the global stage. Trump certainly espouses a quasi isolationist view. The US should focus inwardly, focus on itself. Harris, by contrast, sees value in extending or continuing the high level of support for the Transatlantic Security Alliance, multilateral approaches to military posture in the Indo Pacific. Under Trump, I don't know that you see the US recede completely, as some people have framed. I think instead you see the US take a sort of a piece by piece approach, a bilateral approach to finding security partners with much less focus on a sort of broadly interventionist view of the role the US will play. That takes the US back in terms of its global influence. It certainly removes one of the major centralized powers from many parts of the global system. I think ultimately, Trump wants to play a less forceful role on the global stage, or a less central one, in exercising the current frameworks of power. I think he would look more at the US engaged bilaterally with individual nations, whereas Harris looks at the US as the leader of a global system.